Rachel, are you serious? Marrying me? If you don't want to, forget it. Rachel stared blankly out the window, her voice flat and emotionless. No. I do. Jess's voice on the other end brimmed with unmasked joy, yet tinged with unease. But, didn't you adore that Mason guy? And he just proposed to you, you're abandoning him? Rachel paused before finally saying, the wedding won't proceed. Jess fell silent for a few seconds, as if overwhelmed by the immense surprise. Then he blurted out, you better not back out. I've waited all these years for you to say this. Unfortunately, I'm overseas right now. Grandpa's keeping a close eye on me, so I can't return immediately. But I'll be back in no more than a month. Then I'll come and marry you. Rachel, you better not back out. Jess had always known how deeply Rachel loved Mason, so he emphasized the last few words with deliberate emphasis. Rachel gave a soft hum before hanging up. She pulled out her phone and saw the trending topics still flooded with discussions about yesterday's extravagant proposal ceremony. I always knew Mason treated Rachel like his precious treasure, but deploying that many drones was over the top. And that flower-strewn red carpet, the giant projection screen, balloons filling the sky. This scale is unprecedented. Exactly. Mason and Rachel truly deserve their title as the nation's top couple. Those cliched CEO and little wifey tropes in novels pale in comparison to them. After 8 years together, they've finally reached a perfect conclusion. Congratulations. Wah, it's so sweet. I've been shipping them since middle school. Finally witnessed this epic proposal. If I were Rachel, marrying a devoted, handsome husband like Mason would make me smile in my sleep from pure happiness. Happiness? Rachel scoffed. Her happiness ended the moment she discovered Mason's infidelity. Yesterday, Rachel accepted Mason's proposal, so excited she couldn't sleep all night. Lying in Mason's arms, feeling his warmth, she couldn't help but imagine their married life together. But then she saw Mason's phone screen light up. Mason. Just thinking that from now on you won't belong to me anymore makes my heart ache. Rachel froze. She saw that Mason, who always maintained boundaries, had labeled this person Little Drama Queen. Scrolling further up the chat history, she saw Mason exchanging countless suggestive and explicit messages with this girl. The content was so explicit that Rachel couldn't help but doubt her own eyes. After all, the Mason she knew was always gentle and polite, never cracking dirty jokes. When she clicked into the girl's social feed, Rachel's eyes widened in shock. It was Megan. Back in high school, Rachel was the school beauty, with both Mason and Jess, the two golden boys, constantly vying for her attention. Megan was just an unremarkable transfer student. Yet Megan had fallen madly in love with Mason. Even knowing he only had eyes for Rachel, she pursued him relentlessly. No matter how much Mason berated her for being shameless, she refused to give up. It wasn't until high school graduation that Rachel gradually stopped hearing about Megan. So why, after all these years, were Mason and Megan still in contact? Rachel scrolled to the top of the chat history and saw that Mason had indeed despised Megan at first. But no matter how much he poured cold water on her, she would enthusiastically stick around. Unbeknownst to Rachel, Megan had delivered lunch to Mason without fail for 2 years. Whatever Mason requested, Megan would fulfill without reservation. Once, to see him, she even stood in a torrential downpour for a full day and night. Over time, Megan finally melted through Mason's icy exterior. He began showing genuine concern for Megan. Eventually, they cut through the pretense and became secret lovers. Rachel is the one I love most, but Megan, there's always been a place in my heart for you. She is my moonlight, while you are my birthmark. I cannot leave Rachel in this lifetime, but if given the chance in the next, I will marry you. Reading those words, Rachel's tears fell instantly, and she felt a chill like plunging into an ice cave. She thought, there's no need for the next life. In this life, she could make Mason and Megan happy. Rachel! Little lazy cat, why are you up so early today? Rachel had just hung up with Jess when she saw Mason approaching, holding a bouquet of bright red roses. He knew roses were her favorite, so he brought her a bouquet every time he came home. In their 3 years living together, he never missed a single day. Rachel, honey, do you prefer an Eastern or Western wedding? Or should we do both? Who should we invite? Let me think. Mike and his gang go without saying, and definitely all of Rachel's friends. Oh, I'm planning to book a few top singers for our wedding. My wife deserves the best. Mason's eyes sparkled with triumph as he chattered on about wedding plans with Rachel, looking every inch the perfect husband. In all the time Rachel had known Mason, she'd only seen the smooth-sailing golden boy cry twice. Once when she was 18 and accepted his confession, and again yesterday when she said yes to his proposal. She knew Mason genuinely wanted a future with her. But whenever Rachel thought of Megan's existence, her eyes stung with unshed tears. Mason, do you really want to marry me? Mason paused, then rubbed Rachel's hair with a resigned sigh. What's wrong, Rachel? Are you so happy you've gone silly? You know how much I've been looking forward to our wedding. Yes, he'd spent half a year preparing for this grand, public proposal. But he'd also told Megan, I'll give you a wedding too. Even if we can't register our marriage, you'll have everything others do. Rachel looked away without responding. Seeing this, Mason suddenly leaned in close and pressed a soft kiss to her forehead. Rachel, the custom ring I designed for you is ready today. Shall we go see it? Mason's eyes sparkled with anticipation. He had begun designing their wedding rings a year ago, referencing countless classic styles and consulting numerous internationally renowned designers. Rachel nodded. Mason took her hand and led her to the car, driving them straight to the jewelry store. The salesperson beamed at Rachel and Mason's arrival, rushing over with a smile and presenting Rachel with a box. Miss Rachel, Mr. Mason has truly outdone himself. This ring features a rare pink diamond, one of a kind in the world, truly unique. Mason's beautiful almond-shaped eyes fixed on Rachel without blinking as he murmured softly, Rachel, this ring symbolizes our love, it's one of a kind in the world. You are my most precious treasure. The ring was indeed stunning and undoubtedly priceless. Yet, after gazing at it for a moment, Rachel's eyes suddenly welled up with tears. Earlier that morning, Megan had added her as a friend. After accepting the request, Megan didn't say a word but posted a status update. My boyfriend said I'm his one-of-a-kind treasure, so he gave me the world's only ring. A mutual friend from high school saw the post and couldn't resist leaving a sarcastic comment. Girl, do you even know how expensive that jewel is? You couldn't afford it even if you sold yourself. Cut the pretentiousness, will you? But Megan quickly posted her payment receipt, shutting everyone up. Instantly, the tone of the comments shifted. Some flattered Megan, others mocked her for hooking up with a rich guy. But what Rachel noticed was that the ring in Megan's social media photo was identical to the one Mason had given her. It turned out Mason had custom-made 2 identical rings a year ago to spare Megan any hurt feelings. All that one-of-a-kind nonsense was just a load of bullshit. When Mason saw Rachel's eyes redden, he thought she was crying from emotion. He pulled her into his arms and comforted her softly. Don't cry, honey. I'm here for you. Rachel wiped her tears and tossed the expensive ring into the back corner of her drawer as soon as she got home. She opened her laptop, logged into her author account, and saw dozens of new reader comments. After graduating from college, Rachel had chosen not to take over the family business. Instead, she followed her passion and became a full-time writer. Her novel, titled Flames, was based on her own love story with Mason. The latest update featured the male lead proposing to the female lead. Yesterday's chapter had been so sweet that readers were clamoring for Rachel to post an extra update and keep the romance flowing. But Rachel's expression remained composed as she slowly typed out the next plot twist. On the day of the proposal, the female lead discovered the male lead's infidelity and resolved to leave him. Shortly after the new chapter released, the comments section erupted. Readers flooded the page demanding to know why the male lead would do such a thing. Rachel gave a wry smile. She wished she could ask Mason that question herself. Suddenly, warmth enveloped her as Mason embraced her from behind. Rachel, you're updating Flame? Rachel nodded. Have you read the latest chapter? Mason felt a surge of sweetness in his heart, assuming Rachel must have added more romantic scenes. Not yet. I plan to save it for a slow read. Perfect. Hope the next chapter brings you a pleasant surprise. Rachel thought to herself. Rachel, honey, there's a class reunion tonight. Mike and the others organized it to celebrate us finally being together. Mason's eyes sparkled with happiness. Rachel didn't want to spoil the mood and readily agreed to go. That evening, Mason held Rachel's hand as they entered the private room, instantly drawing a chorus of teasing cheers. Congratulations to our Oscar-winning actor Mason for finally winning the beauty's heart. Mike, Mason's best friend, grinned broadly. Mason chuckled softly and pulled out a chair for Rachel. After they sat down, he thoughtfully kept serving Rachel her favorite dishes until a waiter accidentally shattered a wine glass. You're Megan? Everyone froze upon seeing Megan, stunned she'd show up here at such an inopportune moment. Though Mason frowned, his gaze fixed intently on the cut on Megan's hand from the glass shards. Good grief, some people are like ghosts that just won't leave. No shame at all. After pestering Mason for so long, she shows up now when he's about to marry Rachel. What's she playing at? Megan's face drained of color. Everyone had witnessed her relentless pursuit of Mason back then. Even after he'd started dating Rachel, she still blocked his path home from school every single day. As a result, many people disliked her. I didn't mean to. I'm just working here. Working? I heard you hooked up with a rich guy. What, did your sugar daddy kick you out? The other's mercilessly sharp words instantly reddened Megan's eyes. She instinctively looked at Mason with a pitiful expression, tears welling up in her eyes. The next second, Mason slammed his hand on the table, his brows knitting tightly. Enough! Why are you big men picking on a little girl? Have you no manners? After Mason spoke, an eerie silence fell over the room. He was usually so mild-mannered, rarely losing his composure. Yet he'd just gotten this angry over Megan. Why? Catching my meaningful glance, Mason snapped back to reality and immediately fell silent. But the others weren't done with Megan yet, dragging her into the game anyway. The beer bottle spun several times on the table before landing squarely on Megan. She timidly drew a slip of paper that read, "Hug someone of the opposite sex present here." Failure meant downing an entire glass of liquor. Megan glanced at Mason with distress, biting her lip like a frightened deer before resigning herself. I'll drink. She lifted the glass, but just as the liquor was about to hit her throat, Mason abruptly stood up and snatched the glass away. Then, his face stern, he pulled Megan into his arms. Don't you know you're allergic to alcohol? Why would you drink? At that moment, even the most oblivious person sensed something was off, and everyone stared at Mason in shock. Mason paused, then hurriedly pushed Megan away. Rachel took a deep breath and couldn't hold back any longer. She stood up. Sorry, I need to use the restroom. Only when the cold water splashed against her face did she begin to regain her composure. Rachel hadn't expected Mason to care so much about Megan that he'd pull her into his arms without even noticing Rachel was still there. What had they been doing when she wasn't around? Rachel! I came to apologize. Suddenly, Megan stumbled into the room. Though her words were filled with apology, Rachel clearly saw a hint of defiance in her eyes. Rachel, there's nothing between me and Mason. Don't fight with him over me. He still cares about you. Mason? You sure call him that affectionately. Rachel dried the water droplets, offering a faint smile. No need to play the innocent saint in front of me. After all, Mason isn't here. Megan, you're on your own. She truly didn't want to waste time with Megan, nor listen to her gossip. Leaving those words behind, she turned and walked away. Suddenly, Megan screamed behind her. Rachel turned to see Megan already sprawled on the floor. Megan! Mason appeared instantly, urgently helping her up. His brow furrowed deeply when he saw the red swelling on her ankle. Rachel thought to herself, no wonder. So Mason really was nearby after all. Rachel, why are you picking on her too? Mason suddenly confronted Rachel with a sharp tone. Rachel froze. In 8 years, this was the first time she'd heard him speak to her like this. He was actually blaming her for Megan's sake. Megan may come from a rough background, but she's working hard to change her life. You're a spoiled princess, you'll never understand her struggles. Rachel, you disappoint me. With that, Mason picked Megan up and walked away. Rachel instinctively took a few steps forward to explain, but Mason pushed her away without mercy. His eyes were fixed only on Megan, completely oblivious to Rachel bumping into his arm. Back then, when Megan was bullied for being a transfer student from the sticks, Rachel had been the only one to extend kindness. Mason had merely given Megan a bottle of water at Rachel's request, and Megan had fallen head over heels for him. Yet now, Mason was saying Rachel was the one bullying Megan. She wanted to ask Mason, after 8 years together, did he really have so little faith in her character? The bitterness in her heart peaked at that moment. Tears slid down her cheeks as Rachel returned to the private room, her spirit broken. Everyone looked at her with sympathetic eyes. Mike gave a wry smile and said, Rachel, don't be angry with Mason. He just had a momentary lapse of reason. He'll come comfort you soon enough. But Rachel said nothing, hailing a cab straight home. Upon arriving, she discovered a large bruise on her arm. With reddened eyes, she then packed up and threw away every stuffed animal and handmade gift Mason had ever given her. This included the sonnet he'd once written for Rachel by hand. She tore it to shreds with a cold expression. When Mason returned, he found the room noticeably emptier. His heart sank instantly. Seeing Rachel sitting expressionless on the sofa, his guilt peaked. Rachel, I'm sorry. I spoke out of turn. Mason knelt halfway before Rachel, his exquisitely handsome face brushing against her palm, his eyes pleading pitifully. In the past, whenever Rachel was upset, this tactic had always worked flawlessly. But this time, Rachel coldly pushed him away, then returned to her room expressionless, walking Mason out. No matter how humbly he pleaded, she refused to open it. Knowing he was in the wrong, Mason whispered softly, Rachel, we promise not to let our anger linger overnight. I'll wait right outside the store. I won't go anywhere until you forgive me. Rachel felt nothing but agitation. Burying herself under the covers, she fell into a heavy sleep, only to be haunted by Mason's disgusting glare in her dreams. At 3 in the morning, Rachel jolted awake. She quietly opened the door and found Mason indeed awake, smoking on the balcony while speaking softly on the phone. She heard Mike ask Mason over the phone, "Mason, I just don't get it." In every way, her looks, her family background, Rachel is so much better than Megan. Why do you have to keep dragging things out with Megan? Mason sighed deeply, his voice muffled by the smoke. You don't understand. I've never met a woman who's been so good to me. Megan isn't like Rachel. She puts me first in everything and would do anything for me. But Rachel is a spoiled princess. Being with her means I'm always the one having to appease her. Sometimes it wears me out. It's true I deeply love Rachel, but Megan is so pitiful and loves me so much. I can't ignore such a sincere heart. Rachel's face drained of all color at these words, her drowsiness vanishing instantly. As Mason spoke, he'd completely forgotten how she'd stayed up all night nursing him through a high fever years ago. He'd forgotten how she'd left her hometown for so many years, rarely seeing her family, all for him. He'd forgotten how she desperately tried to understand his interests just to have more to talk about with him. Her sacrifices were no less than his. Yet in Mason's words, she, Rachel, was merely a spoiled, capricious young lady, while Megan was his soulmate. Rachel gave a self-mocking smile and returned to her room. The next morning, when Rachel awoke, she saw the dark circles under Mason's eyes, likely from a sleepless night. Rachel, you're awake. Please don't be angry with me anymore. Look, the wedding dress I ordered for you has arrived. Rachel lifted her gaze to the elaborate, ornate gown displayed in the center of the hall. At Mason's request, she slipped into the dress. Almost immediately, she saw a flicker of astonishment in his eyes. Rachel had dreamed countless times of marrying Mason in a wedding gown, yet she never imagined that compared to those dreams, she had now lost all hope for marriage. Rachel, you look absolutely stunning. Shall we go take our wedding photos? All right. Hearing Rachel's agreement, Mason's weariness vanished, replaced by immense joy. He knew Rachel had forgiven him. But just then, Mason's phone rang. His expression froze upon seeing the caller ID. He walked into the study before pressing the answer button. Less than 2 minutes later, Mason abruptly pushed open the study door, a hint of panic on his face. Without hesitation, he told Rachel, "Rachel, let's reschedule the photos. Something urgent came up, I have to handle it." With that, he bolted out the door. Rachel expressionlessly slipped off her wedding dress and opened her social feed, where Megan had indeed posted an update. She'd shared a photo of the ocean with the caption, "If I die, will my heart stop hurting?" So she was threatening suicide. Rachel chuckled softly, no wonder Mason was so flustered. About 2 hours later, Rachel saw Megan update her moments again, this time posting a video. In the clip, Megan wore a wedding dress too, standing by the sea and kissing a man whose face was hidden. Rachel recognized him instantly, it was Mason. True love means leaving everything behind to find you. Surrounded by well-wishers in the comments, Rachel grabbed scissors and shredded the wedding dress Mason had custom-made for half a year, tossing the scraps carelessly into the trash. That night, Mason didn't return, not even a call to explain. At 1 a.m., Megan sent Rachel several messages. They were intimate photos of her and Mason in bed, along with all their suggestive chat logs. See, Rachel? Mason's affection for me is purely physical. That's true love. For you, it's just years of habit. Mason's explanation that day was that a brother had been in a sudden car accident and was fighting for his life, forcing him to rush to the scene. To convince Rachel, he even arranged for someone to call her. Rachel nodded understandingly, and Mason packed his bags for the business trip. Rachel, I'll be back in a few days. Remember to miss me while I'm gone. Before leaving, Mason gave Rachel a reluctant hug. This trip, like all his others, would follow the same routine. He'd keep Rachel updated on his whereabouts, send her good morning and good night messages daily, and even tell her what he ate for every meal. This had been their little habit, providing each other with a sense of security. But this time, Rachel suddenly thought of something. She quickly packed a bag, bought a high-speed rail ticket, and rushed to Mason City. Her arrival was unexpected, without warning anyone. Outside Mason's office door, she witnessed the scene. Megan, shedding her usual innocent, delicate image, was wearing a sexy cat-eared uniform, sitting on Mason's lap. Mason's eyes were bloodshot, his hands roaming over Megan's body as he rasped, "Megan, only when I'm away on business can we be together without restraint." Rachel froze in place, struck dumb as if by lightning. So this wasn't the first time. Every time Mason traveled before, he'd summon Megan for their trysts. Rachel suddenly recalled how she'd often lie awake missing Mason, and he'd patiently call to lull her to sleep. Back then, had he been whispering soothing words to her while holding a naked Megan in his arms? A wave of nausea surged in her stomach. Rachel, her face ashen, left the office building and stumbled out. Standing on the street, the cold wind blowing relentlessly, Rachel's body trembled uncontrollably. She never imagined Mason would humiliate her like this. Heartbroken, she bought another ticket and returned home. Mason's caring messages still popped up intermittently on her phone. Rachel, do you miss me? I miss you. Hope I dream of you tonight too. It's getting chilly lately. Remember to bundle up. I'll bring you your favorite cake from that place when I get back. The forecast says rain tomorrow. You silly Rachel, don't forget your umbrella. How ironic. Rachel could almost picture Mason sending those perfunctory messages before rushing to Megan's arms. Her mind foggy, Rachel drifted off to sleep, only to be jolted awake the next morning by a ringing phone. Rachel! Check the trending topics, something happened to Mason. Rachel froze, hurriedly tapping the trending topic, and then saw, Fu Group CEO Mason caught in street brawl? She frantically clicked into the article and found a video with skyrocketing views. In the footage, Mason's face was ashen as he pinned a middle-aged man to the ground, punching him relentlessly. The brutal force of each blow sent a chill down the spine. Rachel had never seen Mason this enraged before. What on earth had happened? She called Mason, but his phone was turned off. She reached out to his secretary instead and learned he'd been taken to the hospital. Outside the hospital, reporters and paparazzi had already formed a tight, impenetrable crowd. Rachel finally pushed her way through to the door of Mason's hospital room, where she heard a familiar voice. Wah, Mason. I'm sorry. It's all my fault you got into a fight. Did I cause you trouble? Megan gazed at Mason tearfully, but he only ruffled her hair affectionately. Don't be silly. You didn't cause any trouble. I won't let any jerk who dares to bully Megan get away with it. Rachel felt her blood freeze in her veins. So Mason had risked public backlash to fight for Megan? Was Megan truly that important? Rachel stared blankly at Megan for a moment before suddenly noticing a bracelet on her wrist that looked eerily familiar. She recognized it, it was the Fu family heirloom. Mason had once promised to place it on her wrist himself after they were married. Yet now, he'd given it to Megan without hesitation. In Mason's heart, who was the one he truly intended to spend his life with? Rachel? When did you get here? Suddenly spotting Rachel at the doorway, Mason's body jerked. He quickly withdrew his hand from Megan's hair. Don't misunderstand. That man tried to assault Megan, so I couldn't help but teach him a lesson. After all, we were classmates. I couldn't just stand by and watch her get bullied. Rachel curled her lips in a mocking sneer. Back then, because she was with Mason, she endured relentless attacks from his fans. Some even spread slanderous rumors about her and threw acid. Back then, no matter how furious Mason got, he never resorted to violence. Instead, he calmly gathered evidence and called the police. So why now, when it came to Megan, could he no longer keep his cool? Rachel felt utterly exhausted and didn't want to say another word to Mason. She simply left with a curt, "Take care of yourself." Watching her retreating figure, Mason suddenly felt a pang of panic, as if something profoundly important was slipping away. About 3 days later, Rachel slept soundly until a figure suddenly pressed down on her. Opening her eyes, she found Mason had returned home unnoticed. Aren't you still busy with your business trip? Mason chuckled softly, pinching Rachel's nose. Rachel, honey, today is your birthday. How could I not come back to be with you? After saying that, he handed me his phone, letting me see his newly posted status. May you shine as your own light, and together we'll sail through the romantic starry seas. Happy birthday, my beloved. Mason had deliberately timed it for midnight. The moment it went live, countless mutual friends flooded it with likes, and the comments section instantly filled with wishes. Rachel's eyes flickered as she suddenly recalled the birthday wish she'd made last year. May I find one true love, and grow old together without parting. Yet fate was cruel, and Rachel's wish shattered completely this year. Rachel, look outside the window. Rachel followed Mason's gaze to the window. The next moment, she saw fireworks filling the sky. The entire city became a backdrop beneath this magnificent shower of sparks. Rachel, happy birthday, and I love you. Mason's eyes crinkled with laughter, the deep affection in his almond-shaped eyes making Rachel recall their college days, skipping class together, watching the sea at night. Back then, they were young and innocent. Having the person before them felt like possessing the entire world. The atmosphere was so perfect that even Rachel couldn't help but let a faint smile escape her lips. Mason's heart lifted, and he suggested taking her to the Fu family's suburban villa for the celebration. Rachel, unusually intrigued, nodded and slid into the passenger seat. Soon, the car wound its way along the winding mountain road. Mason chattered away about trivial daily matters, as if he had endless things to tell her. But then, Mason's phone rang. He frowned at the caller ID, paused for a few seconds, then pressed the hang-up button. But the caller persisted, ringing relentlessly. With no other choice, Mason answered the phone and whispered, "What is it? Didn't I tell you not to contact me today?" Rachel couldn't hear what was said on the other end, but she saw Mason's face go instantly pale. He slammed on the brakes, bringing the car to a halt in the middle of the road. Rachel's heart skipped a beat. Mason hung up, his voice trembling almost imperceptibly. "Rachel, something's come up. I can't be with you for your birthday today. I'll make it up to you another time. Could you get out of the car first?" From him. Rachel paused. Her expressionless face made Mason's heart race. "What happened? Can't you take me with you?" "I'm sorry, Rachel, Fine." Rachel cut him off without another word, grabbed her bag, and got out. Mason merely glanced at her before stomping on the gas pedal and speeding away. With a self-deprecating smile, Rachel realized her phone was dead. Glancing down at the high heels she'd deliberately chosen to match her evening gown, she resignedly began walking home step by step. The night breeze carried a chill. By the time she reached her destination, the heels had rubbed her feet raw, the pain making Rachel grimace. She simply kicked off her shoes and walked barefoot along the road. By the time she finally reached home, her legs felt like jelly. Just then, Megan sent her a message. "Rachel, happy birthday. Hope you like this gift." Megan sent Rachel a photo. Rachel tapped it open and saw the words "pregnancy test" in bold letters. Her mind went blank. "I didn't want to take Mason away on your birthday, but he heard I'd accidentally fallen and had a miscarriage, so he rushed over immediately." So that was why Mason had been so anxious, he'd been worried about his child. After treating the wounds on her feet, Rachel stared blankly out the window. The gray sky seemed to hold the lingering echoes of the dazzling fireworks she just watched. Alas, it was nothing but a fleeting illusion. This year's birthday brought no cake, no gifts, and certainly no Mason. As Rachel drifted in thought, her phone suddenly rang. It was Jess calling her on video. The moment the call connected, Jess's devilishly handsome face appeared before Rachel. "Happy birthday, Rachel. And surprise! Your boy's heading back home soon. Are you ready to marry me?" The gray haze outside the window began to dissipate, revealing the pale dawnlight on the horizon. The first rays of morning sunlight touched her face, and Rachel suddenly felt less sad. She smiled and said, "I'm ready." Since Jess was coming back soon, Rachel thought it was time to pack her bags and leave. She spent the entire morning packing her belongings and shipping them back to her hometown. The stuffed animal Mason had given her, their photo albums, the plaster doll they'd made together, souvenirs from trips to major cities. These items, however, she tossed straight into the trash. Feeling quite cheerful, Rachel wandered out aimlessly and found herself by the riverbank before she knew it. Suddenly, she felt a tight grip around her waist. Turning, she saw Mason had appeared behind her and embraced her from behind. Mason's eyes were filled with panic, and his arms trembled slightly as he held her. "Rachel, why did you throw away all our things? Are you done with me?" Heaven knew how panicked Mason had felt when he returned home to find the empty room. He searched everywhere for Rachel, but couldn't find her anywhere. If he hadn't spotted her by the river, Mason would have almost believed Rachel was gone for good. Rachel didn't want to complicate things at this critical moment, so she softened her voice. "I just packed our bags early to prepare for our honeymoon." Hearing this, Mason instantly relaxed. "That's good. Rachel, you have to believe me. You're the only one I love." That day was just, Rachel cut him off. "I believe you." At that moment, she couldn't bear to hear Mason's lame excuses anymore. Mason, however, interpreted her silence as unconditional trust. His gaze toward Rachel brimmed with gratitude and relief, tinged with a hint of lingering fear. He silently vowed never to cause Rachel pain again. So over the next few days, he behaved exceptionally well. Not only did he stop coming home late or leaving early, but he also devoted himself wholeheartedly to preparing for the wedding. Meanwhile, the media reported that Jess, the heir to the Luo family, was returning to the country for an arranged marriage. Mason didn't hold Jess in high regard. Back when they both pursued Rachel, even though she ultimately chose Mason, he still harbored resentment toward Jess. Jess? That guy? Agreeing to an arranged marriage? Who would have thought? His voice trailed off with a smug triumph. The one who gets to marry Rachel in the end is me. Rachel felt a tinge of amusement but held it back, eagerly anticipating Mason's expression when he discovered she was Jess's arranged marriage partner. As the wedding date drew nearer, Mason and Megan's contact grew increasingly frequent. Rachel noticed in Megan's social media posts that Mason had been accompanying her to watch sunrises, hike mountains, visit amusement parks, and gaze at the stars. As Mason put it, he was giving Megan one last indulgence. It wasn't until the night before the wedding that Mason finally had his fill and decided to head home. With lingering kiss marks on his neck, he wrapped Rachel in his arms and declared happily, "Rachel, I'm truly content. I have no regrets now." Rachel smiled, having just received news that Jess had returned to the country. The next morning, Mason was bursting with excitement, his palpable nervousness radiating from him. "Is this really not a dream, Rachel? We're actually getting married?" Rachel adjusted his tie and replied with a smile, "Of course it's not a dream." Outside, countless media outlets and guests awaited to witness this wedding of the century. Just before leaving, Rachel suddenly asked, "Mason, the flame is finished. Do you know how it ends?" Mason flashed a sweet smile. "The main couple must live happily ever after and have several adorable children, right?" Rachel gave a non-committal smile. "You'll see when you read it." With that, she pushed Mason out the door. Once the surroundings fell completely silent, Rachel suppressed her smile, logged into her author account, and prominently displayed flame on her screen. The comment section was now beyond a mere chorus of complaints. Countless readers were vehemently denouncing the male lead as a faithless scoundrel. Rachel was also eager to see Mason's expression when he learned the truth. Taking one last look at the city she called home for 8 years, Rachel boarded her departure flight with her suitcase in tow. Over here, Mason stood in a crisp suit, his refined features enhanced by the stylist's touch, making him look even more strikingly handsome, truly the inspiration for countless domineering CEO novels. Yet here he stood, his usual composure gone. He kept glancing at the wall clock, visibly tense. "Seriously, Mason? Do you really need to check the time every minute? What's the rush? Is the bride going to run away or something?" Mike playfully punched Mason's shoulder, teasing him with a laugh. The image of Rachel in her pristine white gown instantly warmed Mason's heart, and he couldn't suppress the smile tugging at his lips. How could you single dogs without girlfriends possibly understand this kind of happiness? Mike rolled his eyes. "I may not have a girlfriend, but I have an endless supply of dates. Who knows who's happier?" Mason snorted and shook his head dismissively. Is having endless options really something to brag about? Only having one person by your side consistently is what truly matters, like me and Rachel. Mike's eyes widened at the comparison. "You make it sound like you and Megan." His words trailed off as he whipped his head around to see Megan suddenly appear in the doorway. Megan stood there, pale-faced, dressed in a plain white gown, her eyes red-rimmed as she stared at Mason. "Ugh, fine, you two talk. But Mason, take it easy, today's your wedding day." Mike patted Mason's shoulder, shot him a disappointed look, and sighed heavily as he walked away. The next moment, only Megan and Mason remained in the room. "Why are you here?" Mason's voice carried a hint of irritation. He was deeply displeased to see Megan at his wedding, fearing Rachel might spot her and ruin Rachel's mood. "Mason, are you really getting married? Are you truly leaving me forever?" Megan gazed at Mason with pitiful eyes, her fingers twisting the hem of her dress. She looked so fragile she seemed like she might scatter at the slightest breeze. She knew that if she put on this act, Mason would inevitably soften. So she assumed this time would be like all the others. Mason would soon take pity on her, pull her into his arms, and whisper comforting words. Instead, Mason's brow furrowed deeply. "Didn't I tell you? After the wedding, we stop all contact. Megan, your feelings touch me, but I've given you everything I could. I can't keep betraying Rachel. I'll take responsibility for the child inside you. After birth, I'll provide child support. I have only one demand: you must never appear before Rachel." Megan's face drained instantly. She clutched her stomach. "Mason, my stomach hurts so much." "Is it our baby?" To Megan's shock, Mason merely frowned slightly before speaking. "I can call an ambulance for you, or send you to the Fu family's top medical team. But I cannot go with you. No one will ruin my wedding. I've waited 8 long years for this day." His eyes glistened as he spoke. Recalling every moment shared with Rachel over those 8 years, he couldn't help but feel a surge of emotion. His wish had finally come true. He was marrying the girl he'd adored since he was 18. Glancing at his watch, Mason didn't spare Megan another glance. He left her standing there alone and walked into the wedding venue in high spirits. Inside, the space was packed with guests, prominent figures from every industry. Business tycoons, real estate magnates, top singers, leading actors. Countless people offered Mason heartfelt congratulations, while journalists excitedly documented the scene, already envisioning headlines for their articles. Standing before the altar, Mason listened as the officiant uttered those thrilling words, "Please welcome the bride." At that moment, Mason's heart pounded violently. He pictured Rachel in her school uniform, Rachel pouting at him for not waiting until after class, Rachel burrowing into his arms with playful affection. From now on, he would see even more sides of Rachel. How wonderful. Mason gazed expectantly toward the entrance, but after waiting a full minute, no one appeared. The smile on his lips froze. Cold sweat beaded on the host's forehead as he bellowed again, "Please welcome the bride." Yet the aisle remained deserted. Now the guests finally sensed something was amiss, murmuring among themselves. Mason's expression darkened instantly. An inexplicable unease gripped his heart, a sense that something terrible was about to happen. He instinctively pulled out his phone and opened Rachel's chat window. "Rachel, where are you? Why haven't you shown up yet?" His fingers trembled as he hit send. The next second, Mason saw a red exclamation mark. How could this happen? Mason screamed in shock. In that moment, he shed all traces of the Fu Corporation CEO's composure. His thin lips pressed tightly together as his eyes fixed on that red exclamation mark. This must be Rachel playing a joke on me. Yes, it has to be a joke. He immediately dialed Rachel's number, only to discover she had blocked him. He then tried every possible way to reach Rachel, but every attempt failed without exception. The guests below the stage were stunned by this sudden turn of events, unable to recover. The reporters, of course, wouldn't let this earth-shattering gossip slip by, snapping photos of Mason nonstop. "Mason, don't get so worked up," Mike wiped cold sweat from his brow, intending to comfort Mason on stage, only to be shoved aside the next second. Mason felt dizzy and disoriented. The immense shock left his thoughts in utter chaos. All he wanted now was to rush home and ask Rachel. Why? Why did you disappear? Didn't you look forward to our wedding? True to his word, Mason stumbled out the door, jumped into his car, and floored it to 150 miles per hour. Back home, he instinctively shouted, "Rachel." No answer. Only then did Mason realize the house felt eerily empty. He couldn't find a single trace of Rachel. When Rachel was present, he hadn't noticed. Now that she was gone, he realized, did honeymoons require taking even the slippers? Mason rubbed his throbbing forehead, desperately searching for anything belonging to Rachel. Until he spotted the computer still lit in Rachel's room, displaying the interface of the flame. Mason suddenly recalled the question Rachel had asked him. Do you know how flame ends? At the time, he'd assumed it was the usual happy ending, the hero and heroine living happily ever after. But now, a wave of unease washed over him. His hands trembling, he clicked on the latest chapter update of Flame. Chapter 55, Infidelity. The moment he saw the chapter title, Mason's brow shot up in shock. What followed left him instantly pale as a sheet. Every word and sentence detailed his sordid affair with Megan. Rachel's female lead discovered her boyfriend's infidelity on the very day he proposed. She then found 2 identical rings, witnessed his favoritism toward the female supporting character at a party, was stood up on their wedding photoshoot day, and was abandoned alone on a winding mountain road on her birthday. And to top it all off, the female supporting character sent her a provocative pregnancy test result. With every word he read, Mason's heart grew colder. He couldn't help but realize Rachel had known everything all along. She'd endured a month of pretending with him, her heart torn by betrayal, while he'd smugly believed he could play both women. Mason couldn't fathom, dared not imagine, the agony Rachel must have felt typing those words. He stared blankly at the flood of condemnation for the male lead in the comments section, feeling as if his very soul had been ripped from him. This male lead is utterly despicable. I used to think he was a decent guy, but he's just a pretentious jerk who can't hide his true colors. He's got his finger in every pie, yet he dares to claim he's never met a female supporting character who loves him so deeply. I feel so sorry for the female lead. Exactly. This male lead is just basking in one woman's extreme adoration. He doesn't love the female supporting character at all, but his vanity is driving him to waver between the 2 girls. The female lead did the right thing. If I were her, I'd never forgive him again. Even if he begged on his knees, I wouldn't forgive him. Mason thought, the comments were right. He never truly loved Megan. He hadn't loved her before, so how could he fall for her now just because she was clinging to him? Yet he'd lost Rachel, the one he genuinely cared for, all because of someone he didn't truly love. Mason slumped down onto the floor, defeated. Suddenly, something occurred to him. A flash of ruthlessness crossed his eyes as he drove straight to Megan's house. Mason. Megan's eyes widened in surprise at his sudden appearance. She hadn't seen the trending news yet. In that moment, she believed Mason had finally come to his senses, realized she was his true love, and eloped to find her. Mason, I never thought you'd actually come. After all these twists and turns, we've come back together. Maybe this is fate's plan. Before Megan could finish her musings, Mason's hand clamped around her throat. His eyes were bloodshot, his voice cold and ruthless. Megan, what have you done? It's just a trivial thing. Who gave you the nerve to provoke Rachel, huh? Megan's words caught in her throat, her eyes brimming with terror and disbelief. How many years had it been? How many years since she'd seen Mason act this viciously? Ever since they'd become a couple, Mason had always treated her with tender care and unwavering devotion. Whatever Rachel had, Mason insisted on giving her an identical version. Even their wedding rings were identical. But now, the blatant loathing in Mason's eyes pierced Megan's heart like a blade, making her feel as if she'd been transported back 8 years. Mason, what's going on? Calm down. Cough. Megan's face flushed crimson from the grip, her eyes welling with tears. Mason let out a cold laugh and released his grip. You still dare deny it? If you hadn't said something to Rachel, why would she have left? Megan, you ruined the wedding I've anticipated for 8 years. How should I deal with you? Though Mason's tone was icy and terrifying, Megan only heard the words Rachel left. This sent her into a frenzy of joy. She immediately softened her voice. Mason, don't be sad. Maybe you and Rachel just weren't meant to be. It's okay. You still have me, smack. Mason couldn't hold back any longer. He coldly slapped Megan across the face, shattering her illusions completely. He had never found the woman before him so utterly repulsive. Couldn't she see he was on the brink of collapse? Yet she still played the innocent, pure-hearted act. Stunned by the blow, Megan stared at Mason in disbelief, only to catch a flicker of murderous intent in his eyes. The next second, Mason snatched her phone and forced her to unlock it with her fingerprint. Megan shrieked, finally snapping back to reality. No! Don't look! She hadn't deleted her chat history with Rachel yet. But no matter how frantic Megan became, it was too late. Mason's face turned ashen as he read the provocative messages she'd sent Rachel and saw their suggestive photos. The more he saw, the paler he grew. Finally, he grabbed Megan's long hair and declared, his voice cold as ice, "It's all my fault for spoiling you. I never imagined you'd have the nerve to challenge Rachel. Megan, what do you think you are? A scheming woman who used a surrogate to climb the social ladder. The Fu family will never accept you. Even without Rachel, it would never be you." With that, Mason grabbed Megan's wrist and ripped the bracelet off her arm. Mason, let me explain. Megan knelt on the floor, desperately tugging at Mason's sleeve. But the gloom between his brows only deepened as he violently shoved her away. Ah. The next moment, Megan clutched her stomach as a warm pool spread beneath her. Meanwhile, Rachel had flown for hours and finally landed in Los Angeles. The moment she touched down, a familiar feeling washed over her. Gazing at the familiar sights before her, Rachel's eyes welled up slightly. She had grown up in Los Angeles, cherished like a princess, yet she had left her home for Mason, moving to New York for 5 long years. Countless times during those years, her parents called to express their longing, but each time she'd say, "Mom and Dad, don't worry. Mason treats me so well." Time and again, she pushed away the people who truly loved her. When Rachel finally told her parents what Mason had done, they were furious. They were practically ready to grab a cleaver and confront Mason in New York. That Fu boy must be out of his mind. How dare he treat my precious daughter like this? Rachel, cut him off immediately. Come home right now. We'll take care of you. Rachel nodded repeatedly, apologizing profusely until her parents finally relented. Her thoughts drifted back as she walked with her suitcase. Outside the airport, she spotted an outrageously flashy red Rolls-Royce and couldn't help but wonder who was so ostentatious. Then she looked around. Her parents had said they'd send a driver to pick her up. But where was the driver? Rachel scanned the area for a long time before the door of the red Rolls-Royce opened. A pair of long legs stepped out. A man standing at least 190 centimeters tall approached her, his ruggedly handsome features almost too perfect. A streak of white highlighted his hair. His deep, beautiful phoenix eyes lifted, and the moment he saw Rachel, an uncontrollable joy lit up his face. "Rachel, it's been so long." "Jess." Rachel stared blankly at the man before her, whose looks rivaled any top-tier celebrity, her own eyes gradually brightening. She hadn't expected that after 8 years apart, Jess had grown even more handsome. Having shed some of his youthful awkwardness, his aura now radiated an even more distinguished charm. Marrying into his family wouldn't be a bad deal for her. In an instant, memories of Jess flooded Rachel's mind. Truthfully, she and Jess had grown up together as childhood sweethearts, their families, the Jians and the Luos, bound by generations of friendship. From a young age, Jess had been a fearless little tyrant, his reputation known throughout their social circle. And Jess had been quite the adolescent rebel back then, not only crowning himself king but also appointing the young masters of the other 2 families as his right and left-hand guardians. His domineering nature meant no peer dared cross him. Except Rachel. When Jess turned his bullying toward her, pointing at the tiny Rachel and declaring, "You're so beautiful, I crown you my queen." The next second, diminutive Rachel leapt up, snatched the crown from Jess's head, and stomped it into the ground. From that day on, no one dared provoke Rachel. And from that day on, Jess became obsessed with her, asking daily, "Will you be my queen today?" By high school, Jess realized his childish ways and changed his line to, "Will you be my girlfriend today?" Everyone assumed Rachel would end up with Jess. But then Mason appeared out of nowhere. Unlike Jess's roguish charm, Mason was always mature and steady, gentle and courteous. When their homeroom teacher seated Mason next to Rachel, their opportunities to talk multiplied. Gradually, Rachel's heart leaned more toward Mason. Until a fire broke out, and Mason risked his life to carry her out of the flames. That moment sealed her devotion to him. At 18, Rachel accepted Mason's confession. Yet she could never forget Jess's heartbroken gaze that day, as if a lifelong belief had crumbled in an instant. After that, Jess left for overseas. Beyond annual birthday greetings, they rarely connected. Rachel's last memory of Jess remained frozen in that summer after high school graduation. After discovering Mason's infidelity, she tentatively proposed a marriage alliance to Jess, never expecting him to agree immediately. "What's wrong, Rachel? Why are you staring blankly?" Stunned by this young master's good looks. "Just as annoying as ever," Rachel thought. The next moment, she leaned in close to Jess, her round almond eyes clearly reflecting his image. You are pretty handsome." Jess froze, then flushed bright red instantly. Rachel giggled, causing Jess to snap back to reality and pull her into that flashy Rolls-Royce. Rachel thought, if Jess owned this car, it would suit her flamboyance perfectly. Once inside, Jess thoughtfully buckled Rachel's seatbelt before handing her an exquisite Barbie doll. "A welcome gift. No need to thank me too much, little lady." "Jess, I'm 25 years old." Rachel was speechless. She loved Barbies at 5, loved them at 15, but surely not at 25. Jess pressed the accelerator, and the car hummed to life. "In my heart, you'll always be a little girl. Needing to be cared for, cherished, held in the palm of his hand." The rest of that sentence, Jess left unsaid. Rachel felt her cheeks flush. She recognized Jess playing her favorite song, For Elise. All these years later, he still remembered her tastes. When the car pulled up to the Jane residence, Rachel immediately spotted her parents waiting outside. "I've dropped you off. I'll head back now." After getting out of the car, Jess was about to leave when Rachel suddenly said, "Stay for dinner. After all, we're family now." The words family made Jess's face flush red again. He just smiled and pulled a few bottles of fine wine from the trunk. "Then I'll have to drink until I'm dead drunk with my uncle." Rachel's lips twitched. And he claimed he hadn't come prepared? "Rachel, my darling daughter. My little troublemaker is finally back. Do you have any idea how much your father and I missed you?" Enough. She's finally home, let's not scold her." Mr. Jian lit a cigarette, his tone turning sharp. "But that Fu boy went way too far. We should consider ending our partnership with Fu Corporation." The next moment, he spotted Jess and immediately plastered on a smile. "Jess, thank you for bringing Rachel home this time." Jess hastily insisted it was no trouble. The way he and Mr. and Mrs. Jian seemed so close made Rachel wonder who was actually the biological child in the Jian family. After returning indoors, Jess stayed in the living room catching up with Mr. Jian while Mrs. Jian pulled Rachel aside. "Rachel," she said wistfully, "Jess is a good boy. Don't let him slip away this time. You must cherish him. We all thought you and Jess would end up together back then. Who knew you'd set your heart on that Fu family boy?" "Do you know why Jess agreed to go abroad later?" Rachel frowned. "Wasn't it because, avoid me?" She'd always felt guilty toward Jess, convinced his departure meant he never wanted to see her again. To her surprise, Mrs. Jian replied, "Jess went abroad because he promised old Master Luo he'd study financial management. That way, he could inherit the Luo family business someday. But, do you know who he's really doing it for? Isn't it just so he can compete openly with that Fu family brat?" Mrs. Jian's words exploded in Rachel's mind like a thunderclap. She remembered Jess saying he detested the devious schemes of the business world, that his dream was to become a race car driver. But had Jess given up his dream for her sake? Rachel stared blankly at Jess, who was conversing amiably with Mr. Jian. His every gesture adhered impeccably to the etiquette of the wealthy elite. Yet he had once despised being bound by such conventions. "Oh, and these are the letters Jess sent you over the years. You always said you were too busy to read them whenever you came home. I don't know how you managed to be so occupied." Mrs. Jian's reproachful tone snapped Rachel back to reality. She stared blankly at the box overflowing with envelopes. She knew Jess had written her letters. But each time, Mason would possessively pull her close, jealous, insisting, "Rachel, you're not allowed to talk to him. You're my girlfriend." Rachel's heart belonged entirely to Mason then, so she left all the letters at home, never opening a single one. Now, Rachel tore them all open. The bold, vigorous handwriting instantly filled her vision. "Rachel, life abroad is great. I've had a very different life experience here. But whenever the night grows quiet, I can't help but recall the days we laughed and played by the sea. Thinking back now, haha, it feels so distant I can barely tell if it was even real. Rachel, no one here tells me what to do. I can bungee jump, skydive, race cars for as long as I want, it's fantastic. But, honestly, I'd rather have you here scolding me, telling me to stop doing dangerous stuff. You know, every time I complain about you being so controlling, deep down I wish you'd keep telling me what to do. Too bad you'll never be around to nag me anymore. Rachel, do you hate me? I've written you nearly 800 letters, and you haven't replied to a single one. Honestly, I don't have much to say, I just really miss talking to you. Rachel, heard Mason proposed to you. That's great. That guy's proposal was pretty grand, but if it were me, I'd make it even grander. Never mind. Rachel, be happy. With each letter Rachel read, the guilt in her eyes deepened. Jess wasn't one to express his feelings easily, but every ounce of affection and care he had, he gave to Rachel. On the day Rachel accepted Mason's proposal, Jess stayed at the bar all night, drinking himself into a stomach hemorrhage. That was also the first time in 18 years Rachel had seen this troublemaker shed tears. Rachel, you have to be happy. I'm outta here. With that, Jess boarded his flight abroad. She suddenly realized how she had betrayed such a rare and profound affection. After several rounds of drinks, Rachel walked Jess to the door. Just before he left, she suddenly said, "Thank you, Jess. Thank you for choosing me, unwaveringly, day after day for decades." Jess paused, turned back, and looked at Rachel with rare seriousness. He tucked a stray strand of hair behind her ear. "What I ever wanted was never just a thank you." "I know. Then you. I'll try my best. Will you wait for me?" Jess gazed at Rachel and smiled gently. "I will. Even if it takes a lifetime, I will." As Jess and Rachel's feelings grew warmer, Mason's situation became increasingly dire. He never imagined Megan would miscarry. "Wah, Mason, we lost our baby." He never even got to see this world. Megan, pale and tearful in her hospital gown, spoke with a voice that would move anyone to pity. Only Mason sneered coldly. "I told you before, if you wanted to have my child, I'd give you child support. But only if you agreed to leave. But you were too greedy for the Fu family's power and status to walk away. Losing the baby is your own fault for being so selfish. Besides, a scheming woman like you never deserved to bear a Fu child in the first place." Megan stared at Mason in disbelief. Her sobs abruptly stopped, frozen in shock by his ruthlessness. She tried to speak again, but Mason had no desire to engage further. He turned coldly and walked away. When he returned to the empty house, boundless loneliness washed over him once more. He gazed at every place Rachel had once been, a dense, throbbing pain radiating from his heart. The trending topics were already exploding. The hashtag Rachel's wedding escape remained at the top of the charts. The Fu family and Mason had become the laughingstock of this century wedding witnessed by thousands. Yet more than Mason, it was Rachel who faced the brunt of public condemnation. What the hell happened? Why did Rachel run away? Mason practically gave her his heart, what more could she possibly want? Exactly. Reports say Mason spent a staggering $200 million on this wedding. How could Rachel just walk out? Even if she had grievances, they could have discussed it privately. Running away like this just humiliates Mason. I'm furious. Rachel is so spoiled and ungrateful. I feel so sorry for Mason. Faced with this backlash, Mason instructed his PR team to suppress the buzz. He understood Rachel was the most innocent party, she shouldn't bear this public condemnation. All along, he was the one who'd wronged her. While suppressing trending topics, Mason mobilized every connection to reach the Jian family in Los Angeles. But the Jians had completely blocked all contact with the Fu family, even terminating their business partnership. Rachel's stance was crystal clear, she never wanted to see Mason again. So Mason drowned his sorrows in alcohol night after night, leaving Mike beside him frowning deeply. "Mason, drinking yourself to death won't help. Rachel won't even know, let alone feel sorry for you. Enough, stop drinking." Mike snatched the glass from Mason's hand. The next moment, he stared in shock as the usually stoic Mason broke down in tears. "Mike, what should I do? Rachel won't see me. Am I really losing her? Then go find her. What good is drinking here? I can't. I'm scared to see Rachel's disappointed, disgusted eyes. Scared to hear her say she hates me." Mike couldn't help but roll his eyes. "What were you thinking back when you were all tangled up with Megan? If you ask me, if you can't let go of Megan, then break up with Rachel. Don't keep playing the devoted lover in front of Rachel while stringing Megan along. Just like him, countless women around him, but he never told any of them I love you." Mason was truly delusional, wanting to enjoy the ambiguity while also expecting a love that seared the soul. The world wasn't that generous. Anyway, drinking more now won't help. If you don't go see Rachel and try, it's all over. It's your call. Mason paused, then a glimmer of clarity flashed in his eyes. Yes, he had to try, no matter what. Rachel had been with him for 8 years, how could she just let go? If he sincerely apologized to Rachel, she would forgive him. With that thought, Mason immediately booked a flight for the next day. Upon arriving in Los Angeles, he bought 999 roses and drove to the Jane family villa. His heart fluttered with anxiety as he rehearsed his words in his mind, wondering what he would say when he saw Rachel. But before long, a Jane family servant emerged, frowning. The young mistress has stated that no one with the surname Fu is permitted within 500 meters of the Jane residence. Mason's hopeful expression froze. He took a deep breath, maintaining his composure. Please tell Rachel I know I was wrong. If she won't see me, I'll wait outside until she does. When the maid relayed this to Rachel, before she could respond, Jess's face darkened. You broke up and still won't leave her alone? Have you no shame? Does he think Rachel's acting out a melodrama with him? If he loves the drama so much, should I invest in a few soap operas to satisfy him? Just call security to throw him out. To be fair, Jess had a sharp tongue. Despite his desperate pleas, Mason didn't even catch a glimpse of Rachel. In desperation, Mason publicly tweeted a message dripping with emotion. Rachel, I know you blame me. I know I messed up and made you angry. But my love for you is genuine. Please meet me. Let's talk face to face. Okay? It sent shockwaves through the internet. The moment Mason's tweet went live, it exploded with heat. Netizens already fed up with Rachel sided with Mason en masse, demanding Rachel step forward. Guys, who would have thought after 24 years we'd still see a man as pure-hearted as Mason? Even after his fiancé ditched him at the altar, his devotion remains unwavering. Mason, snap out of it. Rachel doesn't deserve you, you deserve so much better. We demand Rachel come forward and give everyone an explanation. Otherwise, I'm done buying anything from the Jane brand. When Rachel opened her phone, she was met with a barrage of online condemnation. She laughed bitterly in anger. She hadn't expected Mason, unable to see her, would resort to using public opinion to force her into the spotlight. But Mason was still too naive. Did he really think she hadn't kept any evidence? Her chat history with Megan was still on her phone. If she wanted, she could flip public opinion on a dime anytime, anywhere. But before Rachel could speak up, the trending topic had already shifted to a new headline. Shocking! Mason exposed for cheating, 8 years together, 3 years of infidelity? A video surfaced online from an unknown source, showing Megan sobbing uncontrollably, clinging to Mason's leg. Words like baby, love you, and miscarriage shattered netizens' perceptions. Simultaneously, a deluge of explosive information flooded online platforms. Netizens even uncovered that Rachel was the author of Flames, where she had documented Mason's infidelity. The same vitriol once directed at Rachel is now unleashed on Mason. Given the gravity of the situation, Mason faces even more intense online backlash than Rachel ever did. Is this what they call fairy tale romance? The nation's golden couple? Mason's such a phony, he deceived us all. Rachel's truly suffering. This makes me want to vomit my breakfast. How dare Mason pretend to be so devoted? After cheating for years, if I were Rachel, I wouldn't marry him either. Boycott Fu Corporation. Never imagined this couple would crash like this. Mason even has an illegitimate child. Why would Rachel, a pure young lady, marry him? Enough said, boycott Fu Corporation. Netizens' feelings toward Mason escalated from anger to disgust, then to a full boycott of the entire Fu Corporation. Within a single day, Fu Corporation's market value plummeted by $100 million. Rachel was pondering who had spoken up for her when she looked up and saw Jess leaning against the sofa, smiling with a sinister, wicked grin. She knew exactly who it was. How did you get that evidence? Humph. I knew Mason would cause trouble. I've had people watching him since he returned. And sure enough, this fool tried to use public opinion to force your hand. Utterly delusional. Jess laughed with unrestrained abandon, like a general celebrating a decisive victory. Rachel chuckled. Actually, I could have handled this myself. She wasn't about to let anyone push her around. Jess shook his head, his gaze serious as he met hers. I just didn't think it was necessary to dirty your hands with this. His girl deserved nothing but smooth sailing and radiant glory. As online backlash continued to escalate, the Fu Corporation suffered mounting losses. Mason, however, remained unfazed, never anticipating his actions would force the elderly Mr. Fu out of retirement. Upon learning of the incident, the patriarch immediately dispatched a helicopter to retrieve Mason back to New York. Absurd. Utter nonsense. Is this how you manage the Fu Corporation? Mason knelt before the old patriarch, silent. His parents had died young, and the old man had raised him single-handedly. From childhood, the patriarch had taught him to be steady, reserved, and above all, to resist the world's temptations. Clearly, he had disappointed the old man. Starting today, you stay home. You are not going anywhere. No. Grandfather, Rachel is still waiting for me. She hasn't forgiven me yet. I must go to Los Angeles. Hearing this, old Master Fu felt a wave of frustration wash over him, wishing he could strike down this ungrateful grandson on the spot. You wronged her first. What are you trying to achieve now with this pretense? Reflect on your actions. You may leave only when you've truly recognized your mistakes. No matter how fiercely Mason resisted, old Master Fu insisted on locking him away. For the first time in his life as the formidable president of the Fu Group, Mason felt utterly powerless. The mere thought of losing Rachel forever pierced his heart like 10,000 needles, causing unbearable agony. No. Rachel was his. They had so many promises left unfulfilled, how could they part? To see Rachel, Mason began a hunger strike. For 3 full days, he consumed nothing. Old Master Fu was furious, dizzy with rage, yet powerless. Fine. Fine. Leave him be. Let him go. So Mason hastily ate a little something and eagerly boarded the flight back to Los Angeles. This time, he stood steadfast outside the Jane residence, unshaken by wind or rain, his resolve as unwavering as ever. Even the servants couldn't bear to watch any longer. One of them urged Rachel, "Miss, why don't you just go see him? If this keeps up, someone might get hurt." The next second, Jess shot her a cold stare. The servant instantly fell silent. Humph, don't worry. A thick-skinned person like him won't die easily. He wants to see Rachel? Fine. This young master will go meet him. Mason had been on a hunger strike for days, his health already fragile. After baking under the scorching sun for so long, his body was now teetering on the edge. Through his haze, he saw someone emerge from the Jane residence. Instinctively, he thought Rachel had finally agreed to see him. But when he focused his eyes, he realized it was Jess, the person he despised most. What was he doing here? Wasn't he about to get married? Why was he showing up at the Jane residence to bother Rachel again? You, Mason snapped alert, fixing Jess with intense suspicion. What are you doing here? Me? I'm here to discuss business, of course. Jess spoke slowly, hands behind his back, but I'd like to ask you the same question. What brings a man who betrayed Rachel and ruined his own reputation to the Jane residence? Jess's sarcastic words made Mason's expression darken abruptly. He snorted coldly, Rachel and I just had some misunderstandings. As long as I see Rachel, she'll forgive me. Is that so? Jess's smile didn't reach his eyes. A trace of contempt flashed in his beautiful phoenix eyes. The next second, he suddenly threw a punch straight at Mason's face. Already physically weakened, Mason was knocked flat to the ground by the blow. Dizzy and disoriented, he couldn't get up for a long while. Jess, you're out of your mind. Jess looked down at Mason with contempt, a faint smile curling his thin lips. Mason, what gives you the right to say that? You know Rachel's temperament better than anyone. She can't stand any nonsense. Why would she forgive you? Mason wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth. Jess's words made him both anxious and furious. What do you know? We've been together for 8 years. How could you possibly understand Rachel's love for me? You're nothing but a defeated foe to me, destined to be a pitiful soul who can never have what he desires. A flash of cruelty flickered in Jess's eyes. Suddenly, he recalled the moment 8 years ago when Rachel had told him herself that she had fallen in love with Mason. The despair and heartbreak from that day were still vivid in his memory. After a few seconds of silence, Jess chuckled softly, as if something had occurred to him. You want to see Rachel, don't you? Fine. I'll give you the chance. In 3 days, the Luo family will host a press conference. I'll announce my marriage partner there. The Jian and Luo families have been close for generations. Rachel will definitely attend. If you want to see her, you'd better seize the opportunity. With that, Jess departed, leaving behind a trail of meaning. Mason's mind kept replaying those words, Rachel will definitely be there. He felt a glimmer of hope, perhaps there was still a chance for him and Rachel. At that thought, his earlier despair vanished, replaced by a confident smile. Meanwhile, after Jess briefly explained the situation to Rachel, she burst out laughing. Jess was ruthless. You're toying with him like this. Aren't you afraid he'll go crazy when he finds out the truth at the event? Does he even deserve it? I fear nothing under heaven, except one thing. Suddenly, Jess stepped forward, closing the distance until she was mere inches from Rachel. His warm breath brushed Rachel's face, making her feel as if something had gently tugged at her heart. It tickled. The only thing I fear is that you'll abandon me, just like you did 8 years ago. Rachel froze, then blurted out without thinking, I won't. I won't abandon you. She had already missed out on so many years with Jess. From now on, she wouldn't let him slip away again. Jess's eyes suddenly flashed with emotion. Rachel. They smiled at each other, both simultaneously recalling the countless moments they'd shared. If time could freeze right here, it would be perfect. 3 days later. The Luo family press conference. As one of Los Angeles's most prominent families, Jess drew considerable attention. Ever since Jess announced his arranged marriage, speculation had run rampant about his partner. Jess pursued Rachel so passionately back then. Who'd have thought he'd ultimately compromise and agree to an arranged marriage? Yeah, everyone assumed Jess and Rachel were meant for each other. What a shame. Mason listened to the murmurs, a satisfied smile curving his lips. He thought Jess was ultimately a loser. He, however, was the true victor who had won Rachel's heart. What should he say to Rachel when she appeared shortly? Mason drifted into sweet anticipation. Soon, Jess appeared in a sharp suit, cameras from the journalists in attendance immediately turning toward him. After some polite opening remarks, Jess cut straight to the point. It's an honor to have you all here for the Law family's announcement. I will now publicly reveal the match selected by the Law family. Everyone present saw the unmistakable joy on Jess's face. It seemed he was thoroughly pleased with this match. Only Mason glanced boredly at his watch, utterly disinterested in the so-called match. He wondered, where was Rachel? The next moment, Jess announced, please welcome my fiancé. Rachel. No cheers. No applause. The room fell into a deathly silence. Every face in the room froze in shock, then instinctively turned toward Mason. Mason stood frozen, a smile frozen on his lips. Looked closer, and his body was trembling slightly. Mason thought he must have misheard. How could it be Rachel? Rachel loved him so deeply, how could she abandon him to marry someone else? But just as a storm brewed within Mason's heart, he suddenly saw Rachel, the woman he'd longed for, glide in wearing a burgundy gown, a smile on her face. Like a dazzling butterfly, she floated toward Jess. Rachel? Impossible. This can't be. Mason's eyes instantly filled with tears. He leapt to his feet, knocking over a row of chairs behind him. Ignoring the security guard's attempts to stop him, he charged straight toward Rachel. Rachel, tell me you're joking. The only person you love is me, how could you marry Jess? 8 years ago, you chose me. How could you possibly fall for Jess 8 years later? I was wrong, Rachel. I truly regret it. Megan miscarried. I'll never have anything to do with her again. Punish me however you want, but please, don't joke like this. Mason clung to Rachel like a drowning man grasping at a lifeline. He pleaded with her eyes, desperate to hear that it was all a mistake. But Rachel tilted her head, interlocking her fingers with Jess's. I'm not joking. Let me formally introduce you to my fiancé, Jess. Mason froze for a few seconds, then his eyes snapped with frenzied madness. He screamed, no. Rachel, you're mine. How can you marry someone else? As he lunged for Rachel's hand, Jess stepped in front of him. Security. Can't you see we have a disturbance here? Get him out. Jess barked the order. Within moments, 3 or 4 security guards arrived and dragged Mason out of the venue. Reporters' camera shutters clicked incessantly, certain they'd captured a bombshell. Unfazed, Jess gently supported Rachel and addressed the microphones. Ladies and gentlemen, I know this comes as a shock, but I have something to say. My feelings for Rachel have never been about some advantageous marriage of convenience. They stem from genuine affection and joy. I've loved Rachel for 10 years and waited for her for 10 years. If she isn't my other half, I'm willing to keep waiting even for a lifetime. Rachel, will you marry me? Suddenly, Jess shed his earlier carefree arrogance, his face filled with trepidation as he looked at Rachel. Everyone held their breath. Rachel remained silent. In that moment, countless thoughts raced through her mind. Childhood friendship, a bond forged in youth, a weight stretching a full decade. Did she love Jess? Perhaps Rachel couldn't answer that question easily now, but she still said, I do. Hearing this, Jess's eyes instantly welled up, and he broke into a relieved smile. At that very moment, outside the venue, Mason shed a single tear. His Rachel truly didn't want him anymore. After the press conference ended, Jess drove Rachel home. All day long, he was unusually energetic, his gaze toward Rachel sweeter than honey. Rachel, what is it? Does this mean we're officially together? You're my girlfriend now, right? Rachel felt both amused and exasperated. Yes, we are. What do you want to do? As soon as she finished speaking, she saw Jess's face light up with uncontrollable excitement. He pressed her firmly against the car window. Do you know how long I've waited for this day? Rachel felt a surge of emotion, as if something had filled her heart completely. Her thoughts slowed in that moment, leaving her unsure of what to say. The next second, she felt a soft touch on her lips. Jess planted a light, butterfly-like kiss. At first, he was a bit nervous, but soon, Jess couldn't help but press in a little harder. By the end, Rachel could barely breathe. I was so scared this was all a dream. Jess's trembling voice reached her, and Rachel squeezed his hand tightly, her heart aching. Just as she was about to speak, she suddenly spotted Mason standing pale-faced at the intersection. His expression was more grim than she'd ever seen, his eyes bloodshot, as if he were on the brink of collapse. What a pain. Jess couldn't help but snort coldly. Rachel, I don't believe you'd really leave me. Can you give me a chance to explain? Jess was about to step forward to shoo Mason away, but in the next instant, Rachel held him back. All right, let's talk. She shot Jess a reassuring glance, and Jess reluctantly got into the car. Mason hurried over, his face lit with relief. Rachel, I know I made a huge mistake. I shouldn't have gotten involved with Megan. But please believe me, I never had feelings for her. From the very beginning, the only person I've ever loved is you. I only pitied Megan. She pursued me for so many years, and I couldn't bear to hurt her, so I made a mistake. But it was truly only sympathy, not affection. Finishing his words, Mason handed Rachel a sparkling bracelet, the very heirloom he'd snatched from Megan's wrist. Rachel, you are the only woman worthy of wearing it. Staring at the bracelet in Mason's expectant gaze, Rachel remained silent for a long time. The evening breeze brushed against her skin, bringing an unprecedented sense of calm. Mason, I never doubted your sincerity. Over the past 8 years, Rachel wasn't foolish. If Mason's kindness toward her had been fake, how could she possibly have failed to notice? Even now, she still remembers how Mason would stay up all night caring for her when she was sick, and when she was unhappy, he'd drop everything at work and spend hours trying every trick to cheer her up. He'd drive all the way to a suburban shop just because Rachel mentioned craving their caramel pudding. Because Rachel loved Disney, he spared no expense to build her a private amusement park in the New York suburbs. He truly spoiled Rachel rotten. Mason's eyes lit up, his heart racing in that moment. So, Rachel, are you willing to forgive me? But Rachel shook her head. I don't doubt your sincerity, but sincerity can change in an instant. Even if you love me deeply, it won't stop you from being drawn to other women. If not Megan, it would be someone else. Mason, can you honestly say it was only out of sympathy? The countless times he'd openly favored Megan, the countless times he'd broken promises because of her, Rachel would never forget these things. Someone like you can't resist outside temptations because you revel in novelty, in the thrill of secrecy. I've told you, Mason. We can discuss anything between us, except matters of principle. That's non-negotiable. I truly don't love you anymore. Please take care of yourself and stop interfering in my life. With that, Rachel ignored Mason's ashen face and returned to Jess's car. When Mason actually tried to follow, Jess called security to escort him away. Once the area quieted down, Rachel noticed Jess's eyes were slightly red. In those few minutes, Jess had gone through countless mental preparations. He'd been terrified Rachel might be swayed by Mason's sweet talk and leave him behind again, just like 8 years ago. But suddenly, Rachel took Jess's hand. Don't worry. I won't let you slip away again. Jess froze, then broke into a relieved smile. Right. He should trust his girl. The next day, Rachel watched the skyrocketing online buzz with a mix of amusement and resignation. Everyone was stunned to learn she was Jess's arranged marriage partner, then dug up their childhood friendship like following a trail. Netizens were instantly hooked. Who says childhood sweethearts can't compete with fate? Jess and Rachel are too perfect together. Ha ha ha, you should have seen Mason's face yesterday. He never dreamed Rachel would be Jess's arranged partner. That jerk only realized what he had after losing it. This is a major wife-chasing funeral pyre. I declare Rachel's life is pure feel-good fiction, and Jess is like the devoted second male lead in a CEO romance novel. Wait, no, he's the real male lead. Rachel noticed Jess smiling as he scrolled through his phone all day. But unlike Jess's triumphant mood, Mason's face darkened like never before as he scanned online reactions. He ordered Food Corporation staff to remove the trending topic, but the buzz was too intense. No matter what, Mason kept seeing Rachel and Jess's ship fans. Every time he recalled Rachel's smile for Jess, his expression turned grim. That smile used to belong solely to him. Mason returned to the Jane residence, relentlessly delivering expensive jewelry and gifts to Rachel. Yet each time, she casually tossed them into the trash. He handwrote countless apology letters, but before Rachel could even open them, Jess would wrap his arms around her from behind. "I'll get jealous, Rachel. You're not allowed to read them." Rachel smiled and nodded, then proceeded to tear all the letters into shreds. Jess was overjoyed, deliberately flinging the paper scraps at Mason. "Back when you wouldn't let Rachel read my letters to her, did you ever imagine this day would come? What goes around comes around, Mason. Rachel came full circle and chose me." Mason's face turned ashen, veins bulging in his arms from the force of his grip. He wallowed in despair for days, performing countless self-pitying acts, yet never once saw Rachel. The Fu family couldn't bear to see him like this. They sent people to persuade him countless times, only to be sent away each time with his cold, stony face. Mike even flew in specifically to find Mason, only to discover him sitting amidst a sea of empty beer bottles, his eyes vacant and soulless. "Mason, it's just a woman. Is it really worth this? I can't live without Rachel. She is my life." Mason downed another bottle of beer in one gulp. The longer Rachel stayed away, the more his heart ached. Only now did he realize his love for Rachel ran far deeper than he'd ever imagined. Mike muttered under his breath that Mason was beyond saving and gave up on him. So Mason spent his days lurking outside the Jane residence. If he spotted Rachel leaving, he'd chase after her excitedly. If not, he'd return home at night to drown his sorrows alone. At first, Rachel found it irritating, but over time, she simply let it be. Until this day. Rachel had plans with Jess to see a play at the theater. Jess had generously booked the entire theater for them. But just as Jess stepped out to take a call, Rachel suddenly felt a wave of heat in the air. The next moment, she heard a terrified cry, "Oh no! Fire!" Rachel dreaded fire above all else. During her senior year of high school, she'd been trapped alone in a blaze, screaming for help to deaf ears. That terror had seared itself into her very bones. Now, as thick smoke billowed upward, Rachel instinctively lunged for the exit, only to find the theater doors locked tight. Cough, cough, Rachel coughed violently, choking on the smoke, clutching her mouth and nose tightly. She tried to send a distress message, only to discover her phone had died at the worst possible moment. Soon, the flames roared fiercely. The seats around Rachel ignited one after another. She could only curl up desperately, searching for a safe spot. The ceiling and floor ignited rapidly. Rachel tried to force her way through the door with brute strength, but the intense heat of the flames made her hesitate. Soon, her consciousness began to blur. She remembered that many people who died in fires weren't burned to death, but suffocated by the thick smoke. Was she really going to die here for no reason? It was so unfair. Her life had only just begun. She had just promised Jess she wouldn't leave him alone. Then, through the haze, Rachel thought she heard someone calling her name. "Rachel!" She couldn't tell who it was. It sounded like Mason, yet also like Jess. Suddenly, Rachel saw the theater doors violently burst open. A figure stumbled toward her. "Rachel, don't be afraid. I'll get you out." It was Jess. As Rachel clung to Jess's back, her thoughts abruptly returned to her senior year of high school. Back then, someone else had also rushed into the flames to save her. She had assumed it was Mason, which is why she had accepted his confession in her moment of gratitude. But as the memory overlapped with the present reality, Rachel suddenly realized. She had mistaken the person. The one who saved her back then wasn't Mason, it was Jess. How ridiculous that she had betrayed a sincere heart because of a misplaced sense of gratitude. Rachel let out a bitter laugh. In the final second before losing consciousness, she saw Mason arriving just then. When Rachel woke up again, the first thing she saw was Jess, looking haggard, standing by her hospital bed. Seeing her awake, Jess visibly relaxed, then kindly asked if she felt unwell anywhere. Rachel shook her head and said, "I'm sorry." Jess froze. "Sorry for what?" "For only realizing now that you were the one who saved me back then, Jess. For letting you down all these years." Her eyes welled up as she spoke, and she suddenly threw her arms around Jess, burying her face in his shoulder and weeping. Her sobs were heart-wrenching, as if she were crying out all the misplaced trust of the past 8 years. Jess paused, then pulled Rachel tightly into his embrace. Back then, he'd been bitter too. Why should someone else pluck the rose he'd nurtured for years? But Rachel's heart was already filled with Mason, so he'd given up on explanations and left the country alone. He never imagined that through a twist of fate, Rachel would discover the truth after all. "Rachel," suddenly, an untimely voice interrupted. Rachel looked up to find Mason standing in the doorway, having appeared without warning. His face was deathly pale, as if struck by a thunderbolt. "What did you just say? That you only agreed to be with me back then because you mistook me for someone else?" Mason dared not, nor could he bring himself to believe that his relationship with Rachel had begun as nothing more than a misunderstanding. The reason he had won Rachel's heart was because he had stolen Jess's favor? This devastated the always proud and arrogant Mason. But the next moment, he heard Rachel say coldly, "Yes, I mistook you for someone else back then, so I agreed to be with you. Since I never owed you anything, you have even less right to bother me now. Mason, please leave." Mason's eyes flashed red. He gripped the doorframe to keep from collapsing. The relationship he believed perfect turned out to be nothing but a joke. He felt a collapse unlike any he'd ever known. He was losing his mind. Kneeling cautiously beside Rachel's bed, he whispered, "Rachel, even if our start was a misunderstanding, our 8 years together weren't fake. My love for you wasn't fake. Think about our past. Can you really bear to abandon me completely? Rachel, we promised to honeymoon in Tahiti, see the northern lights in Iceland, and spend our whole lives together. Don't any of those things matter to you anymore?" Rachel frowned and curled deeper into Jess's embrace, her tone sharp. "I stopped caring ages ago. How many times do I have to say it before you believe me?" Her chest heaved with anger. Jess squeezed her hand reassuringly, then immediately called the police, who forcibly took Mason away. After that, Jess reinforced security at the Jane residence once more, ensuring Rachel would never face danger again. Simultaneously, he became deeply invested in uncovering the truth behind the theater fire. 3 days later, the truth finally surfaced. The arsonist was Megan. Mason hadn't seen Megan since her miscarriage. Compounded by the recent uproar over Mason's affair, Megan's personal information had been completely exposed online. She faced unprecedented cyberbullying, constantly subjected to pointed stares and whispers whenever she ventured out. Having been pampered by Mason for years, she was accustomed to extravagant spending. When Mason abruptly stopped transferring funds to her, she felt an unprecedented sense of loss. Upon seeing the news of Rachel and Jess's engagement, Megan's jealousy reached an all-time high. So she secretly traveled to Los Angeles, stalking Rachel daily until she found the perfect opportunity to strike. "You bitch! Who gave you the nerve to hurt Rachel?" Outside the interrogation room, Mason grabbed Megan by the throat. Had the police not intervened, he might have torn her limb from limb on the spot. Clutching her throat, Megan collapsed to the ground and suddenly burst into maniacal laughter. "Mason, look at yourself now. The CEO of Foo Group, yet in Rachel's eyes, you're not even worth a dog. Yes, I was jealous of Rachel, but I hated you even more. I pursued you for so many years, almost giving up, yet you kept giving me hope. If you hadn't responded to me, how could things have escalated to this point? How could Rachel have left you? If you blame anyone, blame yourself." Mason felt his head buzzing. Megan's words pierced his heart like sharp blades. Yes, when you get down to it, he was the one who started it all. He couldn't blame anyone else. Rachel leaving him was just what he deserved. At this thought, Mason's face fell into a deathly stillness, his whole being withering away in an instant. He staggered out of the police station. Meanwhile, Megan was sent to prison. Rumor had it she'd lost her mind, muttering every night, "I was wrong. Of everyone, Rachel was the only one who ever truly cared for me. I regret it so much." Time flew by, and the day of Rachel and Jess's wedding arrived. This was the second time Rachel had ever worn a wedding dress. The gown was stunning, and off-the-shoulder mermaid style. Jess had consulted countless internationally renowned stylists and spent a month drawing sketches non-stop before finalizing the design. For this moment, Jess had splurged to rent an entire castle as Rachel's wedding venue. Their wedding photos were projected on every giant screen across Los Angeles. Though Rachel felt mortified, Jess insisted on it. In her words, Jess wanted to give Rachel the absolute best in the world. Nothing could be inferior to what Mason had done. "Why are you comparing yourself to him?" Rachel twitched her lips in exasperation, only to be swept into Jess's arms the next second. "He stole my wife for all these years. I'll make him regret it." Rachel chuckled and let him have his moment. The ceremony proceeded smoothly, soon reaching the exchange of rings. Jess gazed at Rachel tenderly as he slipped a sapphire ring onto her finger. She recognized it, a creation by a world-renowned designer. Now deceased, the designer had crafted this ring as a one-of-a-kind masterpiece, truly unique. "Now, the bride, do you take Mr. Jess to be your husband? For better or for worse, in sickness and in health?" Rachel couldn't hear the priest's words that followed. In that moment, her eyes were filled only with Jess's voice, his face, his smile. Memories of their time together flooded back, threatening to make Rachel cry. Just as Rachel was about to speak, the castle doors suddenly swung open. Mason appeared, dressed in a crisp suit, his face pale and cold. Instantly, a stir rippled through the crowd. "Mason? What's he doing here? Oh my God, a showdown between the new flame and the old flame? What a hellish scene." Wait, is Mason here to steal the bride? Given his obsession with Rachel, this isn't going to end well. Jess's expression darkened. Rachel knew that if not for her presence, this fearless troublemaker would have charged straight at Mason to start a fight. Mason, what do you think you're doing? Jess asked coldly. To everyone's surprise, Mason didn't make any drastic moves. He merely smiled gently. He addressed Rachel. Rachel, don't be nervous. I'm not here to ruin your wedding. I came because there are things I need to tell you. I've thought a lot these past days, from the day we first met to our last goodbye. I realized you've long been woven into my life, becoming a part of me. Parting from you will break my heart, but I want you to be happy more than anything. Even if that happiness doesn't come from me, it's okay. After speaking, Mason quietly sat in a corner, as if offering all the time in the world to the couple before him. He watched helplessly as Rachel uttered those words, I do. He watched helplessly as Jess joyfully took Rachel's hand, completing the wedding ceremony together. Every step was a scene he had once longed for, a fantasy he had dreamed of. Yet now, he could only watch as another took his place, destined to spend a lifetime with Rachel. Unnoticed, a single tear fell from the corner of Mason's eye. Rachel, I'm sorry. I ended up losing you. After the wedding, Jess revealed his true colors. He wasn't some ruggedly handsome rebel at all. He was a clingy little monster. Meals had to be shared 3 times a day, daily greetings were mandatory, every action required notification, and walking hand in hand was non-negotiable. Jess even insisted on linking dating apps to their phones, demanding real-time location tracking. Rachel dismissed it as 8 years of pent-up desire finally unleashed. Now that he'd married her openly, wasn't he entitled to cling to her every moment? At Jess's insistence, they honeymooned on an island for 3 months before embarking on a round-the-world trip. Life was romantic and cozy. When Rachel heard news of Mason again, 3 years had passed. The Fu Corporation had plummeted in value after Mason's cheating scandal, but as a business genius, he quickly rebounded, restoring the company to order. No matter how much Mason berated her for being shameless, she refused to give up. It wasn't until Rachel graduated high school that she gradually stopped hearing about Megan. Even someone went so far as to get plastic surgery to look like Rachel and approach Mason. But without exception, they all ended up being thrown out by Mason. Everyone said Mason was cold-hearted and indifferent to women. Only those closest to him knew the truth. Over those 3 years, Mason drowned his sorrows in countless drinks, visited the hospital repeatedly, and drank himself into a stomach ailment before finally stopping. Regardless, Rachel hadn't seen Mason for 3 years. Mommy. Suddenly, a chubby little bundle hugged Rachel's leg. The next second, Jess lifted her up and plopped her into a seat. Bella, where did you get that candy? Didn't we tell you not to eat too much sugar? It'll give you cavities. Jess scowled, feigning sternness as she lectured Bella. Bella instantly pouted, pointing out the window. An uncle gave it to me. He said he's Mom's friend. Rachel froze, instinctively glancing outside the window but seeing nothing. A sense of foreboding made her rush outside. Sure enough, a familiar figure appeared before her. It was Mason. He halted, seeming to hesitate whether to turn around. But when he finally resolved to face her, he found Rachel had already gone back inside, happily chatting with Jess, not sparing him a single glance. Mason let out a bitter laugh. Seeing Rachel so happy, he felt he shouldn't disturb her anymore. The beautiful memories of the past collided with the cold reality, and Mason could no longer tell if it had all been just a dream he'd once had. Now, the dream was over. Rachel, whom he loved most, no longer belonged to him. From that day on, Rachel never saw Mason again, and rarely even heard news of him. The Fu Corporation grew ever larger, yet Mason appeared less and less. Barely a decade later, he transferred all his shares to a child from a collateral branch of the Fu family. No one knew where Mason had gone. Many, many more years passed. Until Rachel's 80th birthday, when she suddenly received a gift from an unknown sender. Opening it, she found a dazzling pink diamond ring inside.